Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. I see those of you in Colorado are bundled up because it's winter, and winter has come to Israel, though it's not the same low temperatures, but somehow I'm equally cold. So it's kind of funny.
Yes.
Anyway, it's nice to see you. I want to tell you a couple of things. The first is that I want to tell you what we are doing tomorrow for Thanksgiving, since obviously in Israel, there's not Thanksgiving Day. Every day is Thanksgiving Day for Jewish people. Every meal is a time to say thanks. Two things that are funny. One is they have adopted Black Friday sale, which is this Friday, which is hilarious because it's based on like what? Nothing. And so there's all of these ads going Black Friday, and so it's like mostly for the electronic stores and things like that. But it's really funny because if you ask anybody who's at the mall, what is Black Friday? They would say, a discount on Friday was like for what? I don't know. So anyway, Black Friday is this Friday. But tomorrow for Thanksgiving, Steve and I are going to be working for a program. It's called the Michael Levin Lone Soldier program. It's a base that they have for boys and girls, young men and women who are lone soldiers, as well as a lone Benot Sheirut. Benot Sheirut is national service for girls who are Orthodox who don't serve in the military, but they do national service and serve Israel. So there is a base of mostly American. There are other countries as well, but mostly American. So on Thanksgiving, they are having a Thanksgiving dinner at the Nefesh B'Nefesh Center for 400 young people, a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. So we are going to serve them and also then sit down with them and talk to them and be included in a Thanksgiving dinner. So we're excited because we really like Thanksgiving. So, and I didn't bring my turkey roasting pan, so we're not really having turkey here, so we'll have it then. So hopefully that's what we're gonna be able to do. So I wanted to share that with you. And the other thing is I wanted to share, just tell you a little bit about the bris, the double bris. Mostly because I thought it was very interesting. And as I said in my email, I thought it was so respectful of the second baby. So I would have thought you'd bring both babies in and you would say like all the blessings, like welcome baby A, welcome baby B, and then you get the ready and the Moel would do first baby one and baby two, give them the wine or grape juice to suck on, and then you'd have a big mazel tov. But that's not what's done. Each baby gets its own time, its own bris. So for the first baby's bris, the second baby cannot even be in the room. So the second baby is not there because this baby is being called, but like if you're being called for an honor, but you're not the baby who's getting the honor, then what are you? Like second fiddle, chopped liver, I'm not sure what. So the baby cannot be in the room. So somebody else was watching baby B while baby A had his bris. And they do the whole thing. They have the whole bris. They go from beginning to end, carrying him in, the Kisei Eliyahu, the whole thing. And then they have a break. And so in order to have like some food, some refreshment to signify the end of baby A's bris. So then we had some, you always have food. You can't just say, okay, now we're taking a break. So there's food. So food symbolizes you're celebrating the first baby. So there were drinks and little cakes and cookies and all sorts of things. And we took a break for about 15, 20 minutes. And then the whole thing starts all over again with baby B. And the baby B is brought in also with the same hoopla as baby A. So it's very interesting. It's not so easy. You'd think you would be able to do it. It's not really so easy to be as excited for the second one as the first one because you already did it. So it reminds me of the parsha Naso, where the 12 princes of each of the tribes of Israel brings their donation to the Mishkan. And each one brings the exact same thing on 12 consecutive days. And one of the great things is if you ever are the Torah reader for this, it is very easy because you read the same paragraph over and over and over again with the same musical notation, same words, same everything. So anytime I used to have students who did this, like, oh, this is gonna be easy, piece of cake. Be like, it's easy because it's repeated, but you'll see after you get through a few of them, you're going to start to zone out, and it actually takes a lot of concentration to focus on even saying the words accurately for, 7 through 12. It's like, how do you maintain the enthusiasm? So the enthusiasm for baby B is done by having it be a whole separate thing with a little bit of a break so you can kind of get your energy, your celebration energy back, and then go in and have baby B's celebration. Yes, the way that goes first is by birth order. So baby A was the first one born, and so that one gets the bris first. He was 24 minutes older, and then baby B got the second bris. So then after that, then we had the Seuda, then we had the festive meal for both of them. So that was really very interesting to find out how they do that. And even though there's a question about whether the father should say Shehechianu at the bris for the mitzvah, because there's an idea that since the baby is in pain, that maybe you shouldn't say Shehechianu. Yes, natural birth. You shouldn't say Shehechianu. But so outside the land of Israel, it is often not said. But within the land of Israel, to have a brit milah within the land of Israel is a Shehechianu. So then the question is, the father says Shehechianu on the first one, can you say Shehechianu on the same day for the second one? So this might sound a little bit familiar, like Rosh Hashanah. We say Shehechianu on the second day of Rosh Hashanah because we're not sure. Is it really one long day or is it 2 days? Should we say Shehechianu? And how do we get around that? Is you eat a new fruit on the second day so that your Shehechianu is really on the second fruit in case you shouldn't really be saying Shehechianu. So Benjamin, they went to the store and got some new fruits that they hadn't had this season so that he could say Shehechianu, having the fruit that then he had to be sure to eat after the bris so that you could have a valid Shehechianu. So all these things I thought were just really interesting about all that goes into the physical well-being of the baby, the spiritual. The other thing that is interesting, and I don't know if this is done where, but brises in Israel that I've seen, and we've now been to a number of them, is they sing through the entire thing. So from the beginning all the way while the moel is doing the bris, the whole thing is singing. So the baby is kind of, I don't know, surrounded by song, so that it's really very, very nice. So I wanted to share that all with you because it was obviously very different than any previous brises that I had the privilege of going to. So, yes.
Question. I had the privilege of being there because I live here, so I had the privilege of being there. Was after for the second bris well, now he had a name, so it wasn't baby A anymore. Was baby Abraham Meir able to be at bris B? He
Yes.
did go. So it was different because he had a different stature at that point.
He was already his own person. He already had his name, so he could stay in.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I didn't see, so I was curious.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, so he got to stay in, so he could be there. He could always lord that over his brother. I was at your bris, but you weren't at mine, whatever. However, families work out those different challenges. So yes, thank you. So it was wonderful to have friends and family there. And since I see Shelley Kark just came on and she knows that the babies' names are Avraham Meir. Meir's for my father-in-law, Steve's father's name. His name, Hebrew name was Meir Pesach, so the Meir is for him. And the baby B is now Eliyahu Zev, and Zev was the middle name of my mother's husband, Neil Kark, who never had any children of his own and basically took in all of my mother's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren as his own, and he was a real grandfather figure. So we wanted to honor him. As it happens, my niece who lives in Canada has a little boy who they also named in part after Neil Kark. So it should be everybody's accounted for, and God willing, they will have long, happy lives, healthy lives. And then the last thing that Israel has, which is so wonderful that I don't think exists in America, is they have a postpartum place to go for mothers. So Dahlia now went yesterday for the rest of the week to a postpartum place that's like a hotel with a nursery, so that she can rest and the baby can be taken care of whenever she wants, so she can get some sleep and get her strength back so that she can go back and run her beautiful, thank God, family of 8 now. And I wish you could store up energy. I'm not sure if you can, but to the extent that you can at least start off not totally exhausted, that's what she's doing. So it's such a great idea. I'm not sure why it doesn't exist other places. So speaking of twins, this week's parsha is the parsha of twins, of the birth of Jacob and Esau. And we are going to focus on some fascinating ideas that I learned from Rabbi Eliyahu Maksimov. And I thought that it was just such a different and unique way of looking at Jacob and Esau, and not just at Jacob and Esau, but also at the human history and Jewish history. So let's take a look. Since we were talking about twins, we're going to go right to the place in the parsha where it says that Rebecca gives birth to twins. So on page 127 in the Stone Chumash, which is chapter 25, verse 24. It says, when her term to bear grew full, I guess she carried them to term as well, then behold, there were twins in her womb. There were twins in her womb. Verse 24. In the Hebrew, it says, Vayim le'u yameha laledet, vehine, and behold, and then the word tomim, bevitna. Twins were in her womb. Now the word tomim, and it's spelled there, you can see if you know the Hebrew, it's in the top line, the fourth word from the left, taf, vav, mem, mem, tomim. There's just one problem. That's not how you spell twins. Okay, that's not how you spell twins. First of all, the word is not tomim. The word is te'umim for the plural. Te'umim is spelled taf aleph vav yud mem. So there's 2 letters missing there, an aleph and a yud. So of course the commentators jump on this. Why is the word twins spelled in a defective way? Was there anything defective about these twins? Now this raises the question that you probably might be thinking about, which was, remember that Rebecca, when she was pregnant with these twins, before she gives birth to them, experiences some distress over them. Not that having twins would be kind of challenging and you'd be wondering what's going on anyway. But if you turn back, when she finds out when the children are within her, just turn back to page 125, verse 22. The children agitated within her, and she said, if so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Hashem. So her question is that the children inside were agitating within her. And the commentary says that when she would pass the house of, like a place of idolatry, that one twin would kind of jump around and lean toward that. And then when she passed by a house of study, a house of prayer, that one twin would go the other way. So she's thinking, why do I seem to have 2 very different children, and not just different, but one seems like a good child and one seems like it's going to be a problem child. She does not go to her OB. She goes to inquire of Hashem spiritually, and she asks this question, if so, if they're agitating like this, why am I thus? Why is this happening to me? why do I have two children who seem to be at odds with each other and opposing forces? What's going on? And that then Rebecca is given a prophecy about them, saying, two nations are in your womb, two regimes from your inside shall be separated. The might shall pass from one regime to the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now we know in the end that that's going to be, the elder is Esau and the younger is Yaakov, and the elder Esau in the end will serve Yaakov. But we want to go back and say, okay, we talk about this dynamic between Jacob and Esau and the descendants of Jacob, the descendants of Esau. But we want to go back and ask a different question, which is, what does this really mean? What's going on with these twins? And what was Rebecca's question? What was Rebecca's question about why is she thus? When we start way back with Adam and Eve with creation, we all know, we've talked about, we understand, we appreciate that God created all of creation, everything and everybody, for the purpose of reaching a destination. The destination we call Mashiach. Mashiach meaning that when it becomes totally revealed who Hashem is, and we're in relationship with God, and we know that reality, and we live according to that truth, that's the purpose of creation. However, in the process of having that creation, we know something else, which is that God also creates what's called an opposing force, an impediment force, a force that's going to try to keep that from happening. The same force that is within us, each of us as individuals, that we call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. On the broad scale, it's called the Satan, and it's the impeding force, the force that is the obstacle that tries to block the progress from happening. That force shows up at the very beginning of creation in the Garden of Eden in the form of the snake. Okay, the serpent and the sin of Adam, sin of Adam and Eve. And as a result of that sin, God had said to Adam that when you eat from that tree, death will come into the world. Okay, death is going to come into the world. Did Adam and Eve die right then when they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? It's like, they didn't. How long did Adam live? How long did Adam live? Does anybody remember? He lived a really long time.
970 years. No, 940 years.
Exactly, 930 years. Because it says that on the day that you eat, there will be death. It said it wasn't going to be a 24-hour day. It was going to be a day, a Hashem day. And it's in Tehillim, in Psalms, it says that a day for us is 1,000 years. For 1,000 years for us is one day for God. So the original plan was for Adam to live 1,000 years. Does he live 1,000 years? And we just answered that question. And we can look at it and see it in the print for sure. Hold on a second. On page 25 of the Chumash, we can take a look at it inside. The Chumash is very precise about how long everyone lived. I'm not sure, always for a reason, but if you look on page 25, this is chapter 5, and we want to look at verse 5. Chapter 5, verse 5, page 25. All the days that Adam lived were 930 years, as Etta said. So the question is, what happened to the 70 years that he was promised 1,000 years, but then he would die after 1,000? Darlene, you want to unmute? Do you want to unmute and then you can answer?
He gave them, I'm just trying to think, is it to David HaMelech?
He gave him to David HaMelech, exactly. So now I have to say, what is that? What is going on with that? So we've heard that he donated them to David HaMelech. Why? Why him? So it's the Midrash on it is so fascinating. It says that, well, Adam was still a clump, while he was still a lump of clay, before he was even animated. It says Hashem showed him all of his descendants till the end of time. And he showed him David being born, and being born and living only for 3 hours and then dying. And Adam said, can I, some personnel programs have this policy, if somebody runs out of sick leave, an employee, and they have like some sort of catastrophic illness, other employees can donate sick leave to them so that the person is not in dire straits. Adam's kind of the same thing. He said, can I give some of my life to David? And God says, yes. He says, I will give him 70 years of my life. So interestingly, he signed on the dotted line with witnesses saying he was going to give 70 years. And then when it came time for Adam to die, he was like, oh, I didn't really say that. And God had to show him like his agreement, like, yes, you did. So what was that all about? Was there not any other person who was, we know, sadly, we know many people who maybe are born and don't live for very long. We don't find Adam giving his days of his life to every single person who was not destined to live a long time. What does that mean? The name Adam is considered an acronym for 3 names. The Aleph for Adam, for Adam, the Daled for David, Hamelech, King David, and the Mem for Mashiach. Meaning that this loss of King David, of being only to live for 3 hours and then to die, is not just some unfortunate person who would not be completely manifest in the world. It was going to be something that was going to keep the end product from happening, because we know that Mashiach is a descendant of King David. But if you don't have King David, you don't have Mashiach. And then Adam's life really doesn't have so much purpose, because the whole point of it was to come into the world, to go through the whole process and end up with Mashiach, meaning God's full plan for the fulfillment of humanity and the universe would happen. So when Adam says, I will give 70 years, he's doing it, you could say, it's not just like a parent for a great, 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 great grandchild, because Adam is the primary person for all of humanity, but that this one particular person is a linchpin person in the fulfillment of God's plan. So the question we have to ask is, why would David only be destined to live for 3 hours? If he's so important, why was there a plan that he should only live for 3 hours? So for this, we have to understand the plan of the Satan. What's the plan of the Satan? The plan of the Satan is to not have Mashiach be born. That's the plan of the Satan. So if you don't want Satan, if you don't want Mashiach to be born, when are you going to try to intercept this process? Well, you're going to try and do it at every time you can. So it started at the very beginning in the Garden of Eden, where the Satan in the form of the serpent intervenes and tries to get Adam to not be eternal and to die. But that didn't totally work. So he's going to still be looking to intervene whenever he can. So Adam ends up with a long life, but not his full life. And then we see that time is going to go on and on. The Satan is very happy and doesn't intervene again until Abraham is about ready to come onto the scene, because humanity is descending into idolatry. And when humanity is doing the wrong thing, Satan doesn't need to do anything. It's like, you all are going downhill fast enough on your own. I don't need to do anything. So what's going to happen with God's plan? So we know God's plan is going to get another boost with the birth and with Abraham coming onto the scene. Who is Abraham's family? Think about Satan kind of scanning the known world at the time, looking for who looks like someone might come on board here who's going to be a threat to me, Satan, and bring about God's purpose for creation. If you were looking, you would look, I will look for some very righteous family that I'm going to try and figure out a way to attack them. Where does Abraham come from? Who is his family? What were they known for? Remember, like the Midrashim, what do we know about Abraham's family?
Sold idols.
They sold idols,
Idolatry.
right? Idolatry. In fact, it said that Abraham's father had an idol store. Now, this wasn't just because like, oh, well, he'll make a good Jew, like he buys wholesale or something, like, oh, he's like, he's like into retail, he's into, retail. It's like, that's not what it meant. What it meant that he had an idol store, it meant that he was a center for idolatry, that he was like a general of idolatry. Well, if you're Satan, you're not going to look in Terach's idol store for a young person who might be somebody who's going to end up moving the world towards God. You don't pay attention to that group. So Abraham is kind of snuck onto the scene through the back door of his father Terach. And we're going to find that this is going to be a repeated approach of God dealing with the Satan. Now you could say, well, God's God. If he wanted Satan to not be there, to just like wipe him out. But the way the creation has been set up is for this force to exist. And we're going to see over and over that the flow of the redemption is going to be taking twists and turns through very strange places. So Abraham comes onto the scene from idolatry, from this idolatrous family. And then what's Satan's next move going to be? What is he going to want to try to prevent from happening? He's going to want to prevent Abraham from having a child. That Abraham and Sarah's efforts should not literally bear fruit. And we know that Satan's power was strong enough that Abraham and Sarah were very old by the time they had Yitzchak. But Yitzchak's birth was, not only was it a surprise and something amazing because it was so miraculous, it was miraculous because it says that the neshama of Yitzchak was released from the clutches of the Satan who was holding on to it in the heavens. We don't really know what that means. When I'm saying these words, I don't know what that means. What does it mean that Satan was holding on? When we talk about tefillah, the prayers, we talk about sometimes that we're changing the spiritual balance and the spiritual power. I was always on the losing team for this, probably because I was on it, but tug of war that you played on field day, the worst day of my life every year in school because I was so bad at every single sport. But tug of war, if you get somebody really strong on your side of the rope and then somebody they just kind of pull it over and they yank it to the other side. We talk about the power of tefillah to yank the spiritual powers from one direction to another. And if the opposing force has a strong grip on a certain reality, the tefillahs, when they reach a certain level, I don't know, in quantity, quality, I don't know what the measurement is, it can change and create a tipping point in the spiritual force in order to create a change. And what was needed in order to get Yitzchak into this world were the tefillahs and the time of Abraham and Sarah reaching that late age. So at the beginning of this parsha, the beginning of parsha Toldot, which we are in now, and I just lost my place because I turned back to Bereshit, but hold on, we'll go back to it. Go back to Toldot, the very first page of it, where it says, page 125, back to 125. It starts off, and these are the offspring of Isaac, son of Abraham. And then it says, Abraham begot Isaac, which makes no sense whatsoever. The opening sentence just said, these are the offspring of Isaac, son of Abraham. If it says Isaac, son of Abraham, by definition, you know that Abraham begot Isaac, because that's the definition of being the son of Abraham means. So what is this saying here? So even though this says these are the offspring, in Hebrew, the word is toldot. The word toldot means offspring, but also means the happenings of, like the important happenings of. So you could read this as saying, instead of offspring, and these are the important happenings of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. What was the most amazing thing, the first amazing thing that happened in Isaac's life? That Abraham had him. The fact that he came into this world is like, and so I got here. That this was considered a major accomplishment that Yitzchak came into the world, which means that everything is going to continue on and the Satan is thwarted again until the Satan is going to have another opportunity, which is going to be at the Akedah, when Abraham takes Yitzchak and binds him and is about to offer him up. The Satan is like, yes, no more Yitzchak, my work will be done. But then when the angel of God says, don't lift your hand and save him, don't do anything to him, then again, Yitzchak's life is saved and he is still now then in the picture. What is Satan's next opportunity to cause a problem? He already has Yitzchak is here. The plan seems to be progressing. The next plan is to interfere with Yitzchak's children. So Yitzchak's children, and this was like totally new to me, originally were destined to be twins. They were supposed to be twins, but they were not supposed to be Jacob and Esau. They were supposed to be Jacob and David. They were supposed to be Yaakov and David. Had they been that, it says Mashiach would have come with their births because they would have completed this world, and the spiritual world and the physical world would have come together, and then they would have had their tribes, and that would have been it. Everything would have been good, except for one big problem. The problem is that was going to create what's the word? Like a flare for the Satan to say, stop that birth. Don't let him come into the world now. You've got to prevent that from happening. So what's going to happen instead? It says Hashem does a switch. And instead of bringing David into the world, he brings in Esav. What's the connection between Esav and King David? And we have touched on this a little bit before. Does anybody remember anything that would tie together Esav and King David? Beth Ann.
Their appearance was supposed to be similar.
Very similar. It says both of them are described as ruddy. Both of them that says that they had the similar build. They looked the same. And they had the same in their astrological, the way the stars were aligned on them. They were both born, it says, under the influence of the planet Mars. Mars is called the red planet, and it is the symbol of blood. Esav, we know, is the person who says he was a murderer, he was an idolater, he was a sexually immoral, he was doing everything wrong, which is why in this week's parsha, when he comes in from the field and he said he's exhausted and he wants to pour some of that red stuff down me, and so therefore they call him Edom, from the word Adom, meaning red. It says he was the red guy. It says that he was the same as King David, but going in the wrong direction. And what does this do? This, it says, it's like a trick on Satan. The trick on Satan is, I'm going to give you something that looks like a King David, but is not a King David. And once you see how Esav is acting, you're not going to be thinking anything good's going to happen because he's such a terrible person. He is a wicked person. So you can leave him alone. You can just leave him alone. So he says, in that case, he says, where's King David? So this takes us to 2 points. When Rebecca says, why am I thus? Why is this happening? From this understanding, it's saying is that she knew that she was supposed to have King David. She was supposed to have David and Yaakov, and that they would be working together, snuggled like our little twin boys, like, and so that's not fighting each other, like they're working together. But they're not working together. So she's like, who did I get? Who did I get? I was supposed to have Yaakov and David. And so she goes to inquire of Hashem's like, what's happening here? And so she's given the prophecy, you have two great nations, and there's going to be a process, and it's going to all work out, but it's not who you thought. And you're going to get David, but you're not going to get him for 11 generations. Now, you and I, in our planning horizon, if you say, it's going to work out in 11 generations, you'll see it's going to be great. Be like, you know what? I can postpone gratification for maybe a few hours, but 11 generations is really just beyond that's above my pay grade. What's the hint to this? Go back to where we said that she had the twins. That she had the twins. That's on page 127. And we already said that the spelling of twins, here saying tomim instead of teumim, that there were two letters missing, a yud, an aleph, and a yud. Aleph and a yud. What's the gematria of aleph and yud? Aleph is 1 and yud is 10. Together, 11. Now I'm going to take you, put your paper, not your paper, put your string if you have one on your chumash here. Now we're going to turn to the book of Ruth. At the end of the book of Ruth, we get the genealogy that takes us from Yehuda all the way to King David. And that is on page, hold on one second, 1273, if you have the Chumash. 1273, it gives the genealogy in the very end. So it says here, and I wrote it down, I wrote it out, that if you count backwards from King David, which is the last person, it goes David, Yishai, Jesse's his father, Oved, Boaz, Salma, Nachshon, Aminadav, Ram, Hetzron, Peretz, and Yehuda is Peretz's father. So after when Yaakov is born, his child is going to be Yehuda, coming from Leah, and then that line is going to result in King David, but it's going to be 11 generations later. 11 generations later, King David is going to come on the scene, and he too is going to be cloaked in something disgusting. What is King David? He comes from Ruth the Moabite. He comes from an incestuous relationship of Lot with his daughter, and with Tamar and Yehuda, with a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. She's playing a harlot. It's like, Satan is having a field day with this. He was like, I'm not worried about this. These people are like wrecking and ruining everything. I don't need to do anything. Nothing good is happening here. The comparison is made. It says, if you had something extremely, extremely valuable, and you knew that burglars were going to try to come into your house and find it and rob you, where would you hide it? You had a diamond, like let's say a very big diamond. Where would you hide it so that the burglars wouldn't find it? So if you want to unmute, if you have your, whatever you,
In plain sight.
you can hide it in plain sight, though a good burglar is probably going to find that. If you want to make sure that
In plain sight, but disguise it, sort of.
it's going to be disguised, it's going to be disguised, and it's not going to be like, where's the first place a burglar is going to look? It's going to look at, take the picture off your wall and look in this, blow open the safe that you have. It's like, that's an obvious thing. So they make these things like for houses that you can buy a rock that it looks like a rock, where you open it up and then you put your key in it. I think actually my mom and Neil had one of these. I'm like, that would be the worst thing in the world for me, because then you put it in your rock garden. I'm like, and then what if you forget what that rock looks like, and you go around and you're picking up all these other rocks looking for the rock that actually has the key in it. But you hide it in some place that you would not expect. The best place, except you'd be afraid you'd throw it away, would be like hide it in the garbage. Put it in the garbage can. No, nobody's going to go through. No one would think you would put a diamond in the garbage. It says, this is David. This is Mashiach, is going to be hidden in the garbage. It's going to be hidden in the lowest life possible, because it needs to get in and it needs to stay under the radar screen. If you have something that looks like, look who's coming into the world, Yaakov and David, it's amazing. It's like, whoa, whoa, that's just like an alarm for the opposing forces to come and attack. But it's like, we're going to have a decoy. The David decoy is Esav. And then we're going to wait 11 generations, and then we're going to get in King David. And we know King David had a miserable. His father-in-law tried to kill him. His son tried to kill him. Nobody liked him. He was excluded from the family. His wife wasn't happy with him. Like, the poor guy, he was attempts on him all the time. It's like, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. So when we say that he was going to be that he was going to only live for 3 months, it means that there was an aspect that it was not going to come to be. And had he come on the scene with Yaakov, he wouldn't have made it. The opposing forces would have been too great. It would have been too much of a headline. It would have invited the destructive forces. So there's a decoy. Rebecca is told, why is this happening to you? Because, like, we have another plan. We're going to make it. This is so profound and so important. It's like when you hear all the things, like, the things that the IDF has been doing, like the beepers and the whatever. It's like, how did they do that? You have to go under, you can't say, and now we're going to do this. It's like, no, you don't. You have to like figure out how to maneuver to get something done. So in order to get this to happen, this is what God does. And he hides David later, 11 generations later. Interestingly, though, we know that he was supposed to be the fourth one of the patriarchs. Originally, we have the 4 Imahot, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah. All 4 of those were intended. They were all supposed to be part of the subject. And originally, plan A, it should have been Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Rachel, and David and Leah. But she doesn't get David, and she doesn't want Esau. So she gets to be with Jacob also. But it's through Leah that Leah is going to have David through her. 11 generations later, there will be David that will come from Leah. So she's like, you don't get to marry him, but you get to have him as your great, 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 great grandson. So it's like, this is the bigger plan of what's going on. So we look at our lives and what's going on in our lives. And when we look at the news and what's happening, to realize that we are seeing just a very small snippet and a small chapter out of a plan that has been in the process of unfolding for centuries. And that the way it's going to unfold, and I don't know. I'm not I don't wish I was a prophet, because then I'd have to be prophetic, and I'm not. But I have my opinions about things, about the way the world is going and what seems to be on the scene, and who and what is going to be a source of salvation, and is it going to come from someplace that looks like garbage? Maybe. We don't know. Stranger things have happened. They have always happened through the Jewish people. Very strange things. So when we look at this, we say that there is we're taught that God has a Merkava, it's called a chariot, and that on the chariot there are 4 faces. And the 4 faces are Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David. Now, you might have thought, if you were going to nominate people to be like the 4 main people on God's chariot, whatever that means, you might say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Aaron. I don't know. You could Joseph. You could name other people who were part of the 10 Sfirot, but it is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David. Then that was plan A, but that plan couldn't happen. But now we're stuck with Esau. So what is he besides a decoy? Does he have a role? Does he have a place? He was such a disgusting person. We know that he sold his birthright for soup, not because he was starving, because he says, oh, I'm going to die. He wasn't going to die of starvation. He meant, yeah, I'm a hunter. I'm going to probably get killed. And, dad will probably outlive me. And being the firstborn doesn't do anything for you until after your parent is deceased. So like, what do I need that for? I don't need it. He spurned his birthright. He was involved in all sorts of despicable things. But what happens to him? Because he still is born from Rivka, and he still is a twin, and he's still in the picture. So how were those twins? What is the point that is always described about when they were born? How were they born? What was going on? So let's go back to our Toldot of what was happening when they were born. It describes their position very clearly of what they were doing. And aside from, again, like if you're interested in, childbirth or something like that, of what happens when they were born. So let's take a look on this, page 127. Verse 25. The first one emerged red, entirely like a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau. After that, his brother emerged, and what was significant, with his hand grasping onto the heel of Esau. So he called his name Yaakov. Yitzchak was 60 years old when she bore them. Okay, so Yaakov was grasping onto the heel of Esau. What does that mean? So there's all sorts of things written that he was trying to pull him back because really Yaakov was conceived first, so he should have been out first. But as we know, the babies change positions. That's what happened with our A and B. This one was closer to the exit than this one was, and they are flipping around. But Yaakov, it says, was holding on to Esau's heel. But that's such a significant thing that would determine Yaakov's name. I mean, you think about parents putting in, your people in your family, giving very significant thought to why you give a child a name. That would be enough for Yaakov to have his name be Yaakov because he's holding on to the ekev, the heel of his brothers. Like, what does that mean? So when you hold on to something, you could be holding on to something for all sorts of reasons. You can be holding on to something to like grab it, to displace it, or you can be holding on to something to preserve it. Yaakov was hanging on to Esau's heel because he wanted to preserve and protect and guard that which was going to be good in Esau. What is good about Esau? We know what could be good about him because we see it manifested later in King David. Just because Esau made the wrong choices and became evil doesn't mean that he didn't have incredible qualities and talents and strengths and gifts. Yaakov hanging on to them was, I want to hang on to that which is good. What was good about Esau? So one of the things they talk about is that he had the midah, that his kibud av v'em, his honoring of his parents. I don't exactly understand that so much because it doesn't seem like you really honor your father by being a discredit to him, but he was always very respectful. He was always very respectful, whatever that means. Okay, so that's good. But we have very significant people who came from Esau, who were descendants of Esau. Two very important ones are Onkelos, who is in your Chumash. If you have the stone Chumash, is your small print next to the printing of the Torah text, the small print that's in Aramaic, that's the translation of the text into Aramaic, is Onkelos. He was a convert. So it says, and he was a descendant of Esau. Who else was a descendant of Esau? Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the child of converts. And look at his name, Akiva, which I feel so bad. When our grandson Akiva was born, I didn't know how to spell his name because I didn't know really what it's based on. It's based on Yaakov. The word Akiva is the root of that is Ekev, is heel. It says what was Yaakov hanging on to? The Ekev of Esau. He was hanging on to the Rabbi Akiva, who would come from Esau. And who is Rabbi Akiva? He is our oral law. He is the Torah that we have in the Talmud. That is all from Rabbi Akiva. His 24,000 students, and then who all died, and he starts over with 5. Where do you get the passion and the commitment to do that? You better be someone like an Esau person. This is called the good side of Esau is in Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva had a wife. And what was Rabbi Akiva's wife's name? Rachel. Little reincarnation there. You got Akiva and Rachel. We have like a little do-over that Rachel, who had to share her husband not only with Leah, but with Bilhah and Zilpah too. So they always forget to tell you that part. It was 4 women and 1 man. That's already way more complicated than 2 women and 1 man. But with Rabbi Akiva and Rachel, it was just the 2 of them. And they had very similar stories. Rabbi Akiva's father-in-law hated him. Yaakov's father-in-law, Laban, hated him. Yaakov worked for Rachel for her hand. Rachel, Akiva's wife, worked for him so that Rabbi Akiva could learn and study Torah. So their lives are just an interesting parallel. So that when Yaakov is hanging on to Esau's heel, he's hanging on to the Ekev, onto the Akiva, and the other great people who would come from him to make sure that he would not be a total loss, because he wasn't really meant to be a total loss. He was just not going to be David HaMelech. And when Rebecca goes, why is this happening to me? And we could ask that question about things in our own lives and in the world, the Jewish people. Why is this happening to us? Why are we suffering? Why is this what's going on? And all we can really be told is there's something bigger going on, and you have a role in it. Each of us has a role in it that we may not fully understand or appreciate or be able to even deal with, except to know that there is something bigger going on. There is a bigger story going on. And that God's plan for creation is going to be Adam, David, Mashiach. That's going to be the story. How and where it falls out and figures out is like, look in the wrong places. Don't look. And we're looking for Mashiach, in the yeshivas of, I'm not sure what, Flatbush or something. I don't know where we're looking for. I was like, don't look there. It's going to be in the fields of Moab. God says about Avram, I found my servant David in Sodom. It's like, oh, now there's a really good place to go looking for your Redeemer. I'm looking in Sodom. I'm going to a place of incest. I'm going to a place of harlotry. I'm going to a place that's like, are you kidding me? Why would I look there? It's like I'm hiding the diamond in the garbage so that it has half a chance of coming out. So I'd say we've got a lot of garbage going on in the world in different places. The diamond's bound to be there. Look there. Like nobody wants to do the dumpster dive, but that might be where it is. So we don't understand. Things are so challenging, but this at least gives us a way to understand and appreciate that there is something bigger going on. And yes, each person's life as it's unfolding, it's not like, oh, you're just a cog in the wheel. Each of us has a role to play, and Rivka plays the role well because she knows, because then she's told, she knows this is not David. Interestingly, Isaac thinks it is. Because we say, why didn't Isaac see who Esau was? Why? Because he didn't get the prophecy that Rivka got. So he was subject to being duped. It's like the reverse of David. Why did everyone think that King David was so horrible when he was so great? Is because sometimes people don't know how to perceive the world around them, and they are blind. They absolutely are blind. So Isaac was blind to who Esau was. In the times of King David, his own family was blind to who he was. His father-in-law was blind to who he was and thought all sorts of terrible things about him that weren't true. So we shouldn't necessarily trust our perceptions so much about who we're labeling this or that. We may not be seeing things clearly, and we may not realize that something that looks really bad or someone who looks really horrible may actually hold the key to redemption that has been hidden away in this very startling place. So Rivka has to make sure that Esau does not get the blessings, because she knows who he is and she knows that they will be misused, and she has to make sure that Yaakov gets them. So Yaakov is going to get this extra responsibility, which is the other piece of this puzzle, that as this winding road is happening, it's like when an employee is out on sick leave or whatever, that the other people who are there have to pick up the slack. I know when our daughter works for Microsoft, they give a 5 months paid maternity leave, and her position is guaranteed when you come back. I'm like, well, who does all the work for you, like while you're on leave? It's like, well, everybody else in the office does it. It's like, well, great. So that's what happens to Yaakov. It's like, it would have been a lot easier had it been Yaakov and David. Then they would have, Yaakov could be in the tents, David could be on the field, and it would have been fine. But that's not what happened. And so what it meant is Yaakov needed to lead a double life. He needed to absorb the work of both himself and Esau. And he then needs 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, in order to do it. And the Jewish people, until Mashiach comes, we absorb the work of what David will do, the descendant of Mashiach. We carry an extra load because somebody is out on leave. And the Mashiach is out on leave until it comes. And we say we have birth pains of Mashiach. The birth pains are here, but it hasn't arrived yet. Whenever we have a happy occasion, everything is always, we hope, we always say, and this should bring Mashiach b'mheira v'yameinu, that each step in our own personal lives should be a step, our own challenges. Like, I don't know how this fits in, but it's fitting in because God makes sure he's holding all the puzzle pieces in his infinite mind at the same time. We don't know where they go, but we know that God does know. All we do know is that it is moving us forward as we get closer and closer. So God willing, we will come to that time when Mashiach will come and King David's descendant will come. Look for it in the most unlikely places. Who knows where that's going to be? And it should just happen soon already and be here and bring the salvation to the Jewish people. Thank you for joining me for this adventure.
Thank you, Ellen.
Um,
Thank you very
Can you
much.
share again, or this?
Thank you. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
And have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice to
Yes.
see you.
Happy Thanksgiving. You give me help, Greg.
You know,
Share
it's funny. Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking of redhead, that King David and Esau both had red hair. Just think about that for a little bit. Anyway,
Ellen, who did you class from?
I'm sorry.
Who did you learn from all this unbelievable new?
Oh, it was so
Right.
interesting. His name is Rabbi Eliyahu Maximov, Maksumov. It was on Torah Anytime. Rav Eliyahu Maximov.
Wow, that was very maximum. It was unbelievable. Like never
I thought
heard.
it's a great name for him. I thought, wow, that is something really I've never heard. I mean, I'd heard like those little pieces. oh,
Yeah.
Adam gave 70 years,
Yeah.
and oh, David looked like Esau, is like, as they say, Asma, like and what do you do with all that information? It's like, oh no, those things are all actually really connected
And
together.
also the Satan, I guess, because of him, Sarah died because he was showing like Isaac as if died when he didn't, right? So that's a terrible thing he did succeed to do.
He
So
did succeed in that, though there's other interpretations that say that Sarah died not because of that, but because she saw that her purpose was done. That the other time we pass away is when our purpose is done, and that she saw that Yitzchak was willing to be the person to be brought, and that's what a parent needs to know is, are your children carrying on what you instilled in them? And it's like, okay, I remember, this is not exactly the same thing. Lahavdil, it's not on the sacrifice, but I remember before my mother passed away, I said to her, I said, is there anything else you want to tell me? Or, is there anything else I should know? She said, I've been telling you everything I could for the past however many years. I think I've told you everything. So I don't have anything else to tell you. So anyway, like we also go when our time is done. So there's that understanding as well. And the other understanding is that Sarah was so virtuous that she wouldn't have died, that the angel of death couldn't get in there unless there was just a split second when she had a moment of pain, and that happened. The same thing was said about Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, that he was dying, but that his students were praying for his recovery so strongly, but he was really suffering. And so his maid dropped like a clay pot from the roof to break it, to just create a sound to distract the people who were praying for a moment. And in that moment, then his soul left him. So prayers are very strong. And when so we don't understand how things work. So more complicated than we think.
Very magic class. Thank you. Very inspiring. Thank you
My
so much.
pleasure. Have a wonderful, wonderful
Mazal
Thanksgiving.
tov. Mazal.
Thank
Can you
you.
send me the physical address of the kids? Do you think they would enjoy a book about twins or not? Or they have already many?
That's a good question. I don't know. Do you want me to ask them?
I take 4 months to get there. It's horrible now, sending
well-
any packages, and they get to Thailand instead of Israel, I heard.
Ay, that's so crazy. Okay, I don't know. Let me ask them, Gabi. That's a really lovely thought. Thank you.
Okay. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Toda rabba rabba.
Thank you. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. Happy
Shabbat Shalom.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.